getting to the stator, the charging system. And shift mechanism, I'll move aside over here. Okay, now we're going to deal with the charging system on this Honda Foreman 400. Got the recoil pull starter, 4 8mm bolts to pull that off. I already loosened these up when I was checking valves on this one. You want to make sure that when you pull this pull starter that this arm comes out right here, and make sure that when you let it go it comes back. If it's not doing that, you've got issues with your pull starter. We've got your recoil cup here, and I guess we can pull that off at this time. We've got some sensors. We've got your ground wire here. That's just a 10mm bolt. I just want to show you, wait to take that off to show you what that looks like, but 2 ground wires coming in. And then we've got your starter here. I'll pull this starter now. The starter takes 2 10mm bolts. One of them's already out. There's the other one. And then we've got actually the hot wire coming in here. And that is a nut that holds that wire on. I'm going to set that back with it. That is the hot wire coming from your starter solenoid here. And to pull this starter, then you just push that back. And sometimes you got to have a small crowbar or a large screwdriver to get that in. There's a couple O-rings that seal this up. A lot of times it does a really good job of sealing it up. But there is your starter there. We'll make sure it spins freely. We'll hook it up to power, test it, make sure that it's in good working condition before going back together with it. It's been working fine, so there shouldn't be any issues there. Now we've got your recoil pull starter. That's a 17mm bolt. I hold it. Battery going dead here. That's off there. It goes directly into the crank. That's a large bolt there. And so that is recoil pull starter. This bolt's separate there. We got bolts all the way around this, 10mm bolts. All right, 11 10mm bolts all the way around this. When replacing your idler gears, which does need to happen every so often, you'll do the exact same thing. You'll pull this same cover here. And all the bolts are off. This cover's just a pretty small one. Being really careful to tap in the right area. It doesn't take much on this. Just enough to kind of break that gasket seal, but it does have a magnet in behind there, so this is going to be a little bit of a challenge to get off. Just pull it like that. That O-ring was holding us up too. But we've got your idler gears here, your stator assembly here. Make sure these washers go back on where they're supposed to go. You got your pulser and your position sensor there. Obviously your flywheel or your stator there, and I will show you, or I have showed you in past videos, how to test this stator to make sure it's in good condition. So check those videos out. And your idler gears here, 2 sets of them. This will go directly onto the starter here. And this obviously just spins when the starter is spinning, spins this gear here. And then it goes back and spins this one. We're just going to be able to pull the top one off of this, as this other one's behind the flywheel there. So that's part of the idler gear system. Now we can pull all these bolts around the outside here. And your shift shaft is over here. Let's see if I can tip this up farther so you can see that. We've got a gear position sensor underneath here. There's the wire going to it, and then I'll show you that sensor when I get that pulled off. But to keep going with the stator assembly here, got 10mm bolts. Okay, that's 10 bolts total that I counted there, and that's including these two for this sensor. That sensor's off. There's a plate here, a little plastic plate. So that'll stay with the sensor, and then this seal, which that seal will get replaced, but we'll keep that all together. And we'll pull all these bolts off. Here's a cable holder on this one. And those bolts are off. Your dipstick is here. Didn't take much again. We're getting caught on the reverse shifter here, reverse shift lever. Sometimes these seals get old or they get debris in them and cause it to kind of stick. So that's what's going on, but we're getting closer here. There we go. All right, this cover is off now. That's what it looks like underneath. There's our shift assembly here, your shift arm. And so that shift this, that's your cover there. Replace that gasket, your shift. This goes all the way to the other side. And remember that washer that I started to take off but then didn't? That would have fell on the other side now. So that went with these pieces here. So this slides onto this there. And there's only one spot that will go. Your reverse arm here, and that is spring loaded. Actually, it looks like that's not even positioned quite right. That needs to come spin back before it can be pulled off. You can see when we spin it back like that, that arm comes up from that case. And the spring is actually broken, which is probably why we're having the issues we're having with this motor. So to finish out this flywheel, or the charging system on this, grab a puller, looks like this. Let me know if you need one. I do sell them. All different brands of them. Motion Pro, I would say, is a more well-known brand. K&L makes another one. But you don't want to just use a bolt. This is hardened steel. They can run it in. Just like a bolt threading in there. And what happens is you're pushing against the crank. Runs right into the crankshaft there, pushing it out. So once you get it off, no need for the puller anymore. That's all you need that puller for. But these pullers are pretty cheap compared to some of the other flywheel pullers. Here's your one-way gear. It's your starter clutch gear. Here's your starter clutch bearing assembly. That'll only go one direction. You can see I'm not allowed to spin the other way. And then our bearing that sits in behind here. Here's a Woodruff key here. If for whatever reason you gotta take that out, you can just tap on it with a screwdriver. Then we can finish taking our idler gear out. That's a gear reduction, is what that one's called.